It's time for Recipe of the Day. You know by now that I'm obsessed with tri-tip steak, and today I am continuing on this theme. I am talking about how to grill tri-tip, and I'm also giving you my favorite tri-tip marinade. This marinade can of course be used on any kind of beef, but I was really honing in on those meaty, beefy flavors in the tri-tip and have really bold flavors in here too. And so that is what is going on. So first I'm going to tell you what is in the marinade, then I'm going to tell you how long to marinate it for, and then I'm going to talk about grilling that beautiful tri-tip. First, though, what is tri-tip? It is also called a Santa Maria steak or a California cut. And even though it has the word steak in the title, it's actually a fairly large cut of beef from the bottom sirloin. And when you cook one of these, it is going to be serving several people, as many as 6 people, because it is 2 to 2.5, even 3 pounds. So think of this the way that you would think of like a flank steak, or when you do like a London broil, you're cooking this big piece of sort of flatter beef, and then you're going to let it rest, and then you're going to slice it and serve it to more than one person. Now, the reason it is called a tri-tip is because it's triangular in shape. It has 3 tips, and that means it has an interesting grain pattern. I will link in the show notes for this to my How to Cut Tri-Tip post, which has diagrams for you as well. Just have a look at the tri-tip before you cook it and see how the grain changes the direction that it's running through the meat. So then when you are cutting it, you need to always be going against that direction, which is going to change. You're going to be turning the meat as you slice it. That's the important thing to know. Okay, now you know what tri-tip is. You know to have a good look at it before you cook it. And now I'm going to tell you what to put in the marinade. You're going to start with a 1/2 cup of olive oil. And I'll just say, if you want to use a less expensive oil, I like to use grapeseed oil in this kind of thing. We're not really using this for the flavor. We just need some oil in there so that it's going to not stick to the grill when we cook it later. That's mostly what it's for, and to carry some of the flavors from the other ingredients. So measure that 1/2 cup of oil into a medium-sized bowl, and then you're going to zest a lemon into there. I just find that the lemon zest has so much flavor and it really can penetrate if you do that. Also, juice that lemon and add that juice in as well, and then add 2 tablespoons of brown sugar, 2 tablespoons of red wine vinegar, 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, a tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce, a tablespoon of Dijon mustard. That is there mostly to help emulsify the marinade, and you can even add extra. If you start whisking it together in a moment and it's not emulsifying and like holding together in one smooth, unseparated liquid, you can add more mustard and that will help that. And then also a tablespoon of salt. That sounds like a lot, but this is almost like part marinade and part brine. And you know, I am obsessed with brining. So when it comes to marinating, usually the flavors can only penetrate a little bit into the meat. They don't go that deeply. But if you have a good salt content in there, it can start really getting in the way that a brine does and help to tenderize. So that's why there's so much salt and that soy sauce in there. Then also a teaspoon of garlic powder and a teaspoon of onion powder. You could of course use fresh of either of those, but I don't find that they impart the flavor as much as the powders do. The powders just instantly start bringing in the flavor. You know what I mean? Okay, you're going to whisk that all together until it's nice and emulsified, adding a little more mustard if you need to, and then your tri-tip is going in there. Like I said, it's going to be between 2 to 3 pounds. Now, what I like to do is to actually put the liquid into a zip top bag and then put the tri-tip in there and then remove all the air from the bag. You can do that using the vacuum seal technique that I use with a big pot of water. You have a pot of water and then you seal the bag most of the way, leaving just a little gap, and then you submerge that whole thing, the bag, right in there except for that little gap. You don't want to get water in the bag. The water is going to push the air out of the bag, and then you seal the bag, and then you have that marinade really, really sucked up close to the meat. That is my favorite way to do it. You also don't need as much marinade ingredients when you do that because it's really coating all around that meat. But if you have a different way that you like to marinate, go ahead and do that. I have done the testing on this kind of marinade before, and the optimum amount of time is 4 hours. Any more than that doesn't seem to buy you anything. It doesn't get any better, and any less than that is not quite as good. But 4 is optimum. 2 is fine. If you just have 2 hours, do 2 hours. And if you're going to leave it for 12 hours, that is the maximum that I recommend. We don't want the meat to start getting mushy, you know? Okay, for cooking this marinated tri-tip, if you are going to cook it on the stove or like pan roasted stove, then oven, which is what I told you about back on August 6th, you can do that. You just want to wipe off most of the marinade because it's going to burn in the skillet. If you're grilling, you're going to be fine. It's not going to burn on there. What you want to do is just shake the meat off a little bit, shake it off so that excess marinade is coming off, but some clinging to it is fine. No matter how you're cooking it, you're not going to be adding any more seasoning and definitely not any more salt because there is enough in there. Now, I like to use a probe thermometer for this, and really, because tri-tips are kind of uneven in thickness, each one is thicker in one part than anywhere else, and then when you compare one to another, they are different thicknesses. It is best to use a probe thermometer, and then you know exactly what the temperature is going to be. Now, because it has an uneven thickness, it's like really thin and tapered at one end and like really thick where it kind of is in the very center, you're going to have unevenly cooked meat. Some is going to be more well done than others. I actually love this for cooking for my family because we do like different things. I like my steaks kind of more medium. They like their steaks kind of more well done. So if I put the probe right in the middle and cook that to my medium temperature, I know I'm going to have some medium slices and they're going to have some more well done ones towards the end. So really what you're doing here is you are cooking that middle where the probe is to the preference of your least well done steak person, right? That's what you want to do. I get the grill ready for high heat cooking over direct heat. If your grill has a thermometer, you want the good 450 degrees Fahrenheit here. If you do not, you're using the Mississippi hand test. What does that mean? You put your hands 5 inches over the cooking grate and you measure how long you can hold your hands there by going 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. If you need to pull your hands back after 2 to 4 seconds, then you know you have high heat. Then that tri-tip that you've just sort of shaken the marinade off of is going on there with its probe thermometer right in the middle, and it goes right on that direct heat, and you're going to close the lid and cook it for 5 minutes undisturbed. You're going to get really nice charring from the oil and the sugars that we put in that marinade. Then after 5 minutes, you can either leave it or you could turn it 90 degrees to try and get those hash marks. Cook for another 3 minutes. After 8 minutes on the grill, you're going to flip it over and then cook it for 5 minutes on the second side, still over the direct heat. And then that's when you're going to start paying attention to your thermometer. If you want it medium, like I do, you're taking it off at about 130, 135 degrees Fahrenheit. And then it's going to raise up to that medium temperature, 140, 145 as it rests. And of course, those other bits, those narrower parts are going to be a higher temperature. And I just want to say, if you've never made this before and you're worrying about this, don't worry too much. You're going to be slicing this nice and thin against the grain. And so it's going to be juicy and tender, even if you do slightly overcook it. You know, I say I prefer the more medium slices, but I've eaten the more well done ones at the end and they are delicious as well. So that is it really. You're taking it off the grill and letting it rest for 10 minutes and then you're slicing it against the grain, nice and thin. And then it is wonderful piled into sandwiches on top of salad. We use it for like steak burrito bowl kind of things. Everybody loves that. You will find a million things to use this delicious beef tri-tip for. I know it. I actually really can't wait for you to try this. I will put the link to this recipe in the show notes for this podcast episode, or you can head to cookthestory.com/ROTD and get it there. Everything there is arranged by date, so it's helpful to know that today is June 1st of 2025. Also, if you love my recipes and cooking ideas, I have a great place for you to get more. Head to cookthestory.com/courses, COURSES, and you will see all of my little cooking courses there. You can sign up for them. There's one for like meal planning that's called Rotation Ready Recipes. There's one for Instant Pot. There's one for Air Fryer. You sign up there and you start getting more delicious recipes and ideas in your inbox straight from me. Head to cookthestory.com/courses to sign up now. I am Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookful.com, the all new chicken cookbook, and from this podcast, Recipe of the Day. I hope you have a great day. Let's get cooking.